Well, hello, community of conversation at A Leadership Beyond. Tom and I are here with Dot Proux, who's one of our former guests and friend and a consultant. And Dot, I'll ask you just to say a few words to introduce yourself as we get started. But we are here today to share with this community a little bit more deeply how Tom and I and A Leadership Beyond got started and what our future initiatives are to bring more service and more support to this community in a more profound way. So Dot, would you just, I know you're going to kick us off, Dot, you'll be kind of interviewing us. So we're flipping the tables a little bit, but just, however you'd like to lead the way, but please just do a little introduction of yourself first.
Sure. Thanks. And I I kind of feel like I'm a real member of your community of conversation. I feel lucky to have been invited on twice and this time asking you guys the questions. So thanks. My background is I was a partner at Ernst & Young for a number of years and so led a lot of teams, served a lot of clients, had a great career, loved it, very energizing. I retired fairly young at 53 and now I'm an executive coach. And I also teach mindfulness and do team workshops, emotional intelligence workshops, the work that I feel like I was actually cut out to do. Through that work, I met Tom, and through Tom, I met you, Adrienne, and I'm really happy to be here. Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you for doing this for us.
Yeah. Shall I start?
Yeah.
You're in charge, Dot.
All right. So, we're having the conversation. I love origin stories. How did this collaboration start, this A Leadership Beyond?
You want me to make the
Don't
first
everybody
stab at
jump.
that, Adrian? So
You you start because I've done
I'll
enough
start.
talking.
I'll start. That's fair. So Adrian and I were part of a networking group, and I talked to her. This was pre-COVID, and you actually talk to people, but I talked to her, and early on in the conversation, she said, she leads these change initiatives and she's people first. No matter how bright the people that are leading this, if they don't communicate it well, it's going to produce things they didn't anticipate and not produce what they did anticipate. And when she said that, this came to my mind instantly. I clean up on the back end of some of those initiatives because I've seen at my clients where really well thought out organizational change at the runway level, people don't know what in the world's going on. They don't know how to have conversations with each other. And so we were at different ends of the same initiative, is the short way to put it. But we had the value in the middle, and it's always our value, people first.
Yeah, I would say that, we lead with that for sure. And that's the one thing that when we are working to connect community members and bring more members in, we are really looking for leaders who genuinely mean people first. Like they don't just say they're people first, but they behave that way. And those are the leaders who we want to work with, who we want to support, because we recognize this turmoil between the value of putting people first and the business of getting results, right? And so how do you make those two things work together? Our belief is that by putting people first, you will get the results, right? So to piggyback on some of Tom's history, I spent 20 years in corporate HR and strategic roles in big companies, big enterprise companies, doing lots of different things, leading change ultimately before I decided to start my own practice. But prior to that, involved in a lot of talent management, talent development work. So kind of grew up in that HR space and then came into the change management space from there.
Yeah, you guys are like puzzle pieces that fit together. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm struck by that phrase, people first, because you have it in common. And if I were to listen just at the surface to a lot of the companies and executives that I work with, I would say they also say they are people first.
Hmm.
You know, and my experience is when you peel back the layers, sometimes it is just kind of a surface thing they say. So what does that mean, people first?
Well, I'm going to take it from my lens first, and then Adrian, which is that there are people who say our people are our greatest asset, and it just becomes this saying, and everybody goes, yeah, yeah, yeah. But as Adrian said, they don't behave as it's true. And to oversimplify intentionally, they might not really care. They want to get what they want, and they want people to cooperate. Or they might be sincere, but not know how to go about doing it. So we have a process that begins with self awareness, then moves to self plus others, and then moves self plus others plus work. We do it the other way around in business. We throw bodies at things we need to do, at problems. And so it's not strategic, even if their intention is people first. But from my lens, I started teaching influence without formal authority back around the turn of the century. And we came up with this definition that says that influencing in a principled way is positioning the value you bring against what they care about. And if you don't start by understanding what they care about, it might be valuable, but it's poorly positioned, and then you have a scatter. So people first means whose cooperation do we need? And why would they cooperate from their side of the table? And it's easy to say and hard to do. And that's how you flesh out if people really want to learn to do that. And what Adrienne pointed at, which is true, is it makes business sense because you have 168 hours every week. People talk about time management. It's impossible. Sun rises in the east, sets in the west. Nobody's been able to manage time, but you can manage priorities and you can manage focus. Well, I'm not very good at that, but it's at least conceivable that you can manage focus. And so if you want to create more value than the 168 hours, you must gain the cooperation of other people. It's not optional. Otherwise, you just have to do it all yourself. And you can take all the productivity classes in the world. You're not going to 100 times more productive. If you want to expand your value 100 times, you got to get people on board. And that's how we see leadership, or one of the two dimensions of leadership. Adrian?
Yeah. So well said. Um, the way that I would answer that is that we are whole selves. And this is one of the things that I explained early days when Tom and I first started working together that he always likes me to say, and that I work into a lot of what we talk about. But when we come to work, you cannot divide yourself up. So you are bringing your whole self to work. And I think people first mindset is acknowledging and honoring that we are whole humans coming to work to do the work we are there to do, but we're bringing in the door with us all of our personal experiences, all of the hardships that maybe were happened on your way in the door that day, right? You can't just leave it and come in and have a certain presence without considering that all of that is coming with you. So bringing your values and yes, your experiences and your credentials and your resume and all of that, but you're also you're bringing your heart as well. And leaders who are really driven by people first are showing up in honor of that. They're bringing empathy. They, yes, are focused on results, but in an empathetic way towards the people that are doing the work for them. The other words I wrote down with they're supportive, right? They're understanding, and that they're to Tom's point around, we start with self-awareness in the model that we apply. We're looking at the strengths of individuals. We're looking at the areas of caution for individuals, or you might call them blind spots, and we're honoring those. So when we look at an individual and then we look at those individuals working together, how do we lean into the strengths of individuals to do a certain kind of work? And how are we aware of the caution areas or the blind spots so that we can communicate better, we can accommodate some of those so that we're more effective in the work we're doing, which then drives those results that you're looking after.
Yeah, I hear a lot of purpose in the way you two talk about the conversations that you're engaging in and the work that you do as a result. Let me see if I can articulate this. You know, there have been times in the last several years where people first and all of the real purposefulness of it is in vogue, even with business leaders who may not necessarily have come to that in their heart just yet. And there are times when it's kind of on the downswing. And my observation is that it's a downswing right now. What are you hearing and seeing about that trend in your conversations?
Well, I know I don't like to overdo the generational thing, but the exposure I've had to young professionals is they're hungry for meaning. And and it's much more apparent. Baby boomers are too, which I is one, but many of them grew up in a work environment where your personal life was out there and you just had to make it, pack it, and ship it. And they may not have liked it, but there was more acceptance of that. And they would have never, especially women. I work with one senior person in quality at a big company, and she said when she sees these young people talking about balance when they're 22, she said, when I went to GE in 22, there was no way I could use the word balance. You were there, I won't use the word, until you got your bona fides. And then maybe, just maybe, probably not, but just maybe you can start talking about those things. So you're right. A lot of the shift is driven by existential reality. It's the power dynamics. When everybody was competing over talent, you could talk about it more. And when that constricts, it goes down. But for us, it really isn't optional, because the way that we define leadership, it literally means to go before. And we go before in vision, we go before in purpose, and then the goals that support that. And we bring people with us who want to go to the same place. So if there isn't meaning, there's dissipation of energy. And that's a business reality. We can suck it up and do it, but it's not very sustainable, especially with all the options that are at people. So I think trends will come and go. But for us, meaningful, value-driven work is not optional for human fulfillment. That's a core belief that shows up in Adrienne and in me.
Mm-hmm. And sustainability is, I think, is a key word there, because these trends will come and go. And I think you're right, Dot, that we are now starting to see, we had a trend, during COVID 2020, 2021. We're all working from home. We're all scared. We don't know what's coming. There was so much ambiguity and uncertainty. And I think all the HR people were kind of like, oh, everybody is starting to feel what we've been preaching all along, right? Like, hurrah, you guys are starting to see it. Like, hey, there's humans in those desks, right? And so we were more empathetic, we were more understanding to, I've got to get my kids to school, or I've got to get them home, or I have a family member I need to tend to. And we were just so much more understanding it is starting, I see, to kind of go the other way again. I just read an article about that very thing with that there's becoming more of a trend of highly assertive, we'll say, leaders. So not being afraid to be the ones to have the strong voice, to have the strong directive, and being more willing to communicate reductions in force or work from home changes, policy changes. Raising, leaders are raising their hands saying, you want me to be the bad guy? I'll be the bad guy. Right. So it's starting to, and maybe that's now starting to be commended. I think it's this shift, right? Where some of us are still commending the show up with empathy and remember that we're all humans here. But then also there's a rise in, some of us, you also need the people that need to get business done. And here's how you get business done. We have to be more directive. So where's that balance going to shake out? And then you add in the generational mix, and I'll use I think there's a strong divide on, to what your point, Tom, with younger generations being more connected to having to find meaning in their work. I also believe that they are better, and I will say better, that might be controversial, but they are better at setting boundaries. Those of us in older generations, we had to learn that, still learning boundaries, right? Like Dot, your very story, my story, right? I did not have good boundaries. I was working crazy. And you were commended for that. And that's not flying with the younger generations. They're like, hey, I just worked 27 hours and it's Tuesday, right? So guess what? I'm working one more day. And Thursday and Friday I'm taking off. And, my generation would have been like, excuse me, no, you're here Monday through Friday. Yeah, but look at all the work I put in.
Yeah.
Right. So there's a challenge there. There's going to be some conflict.
Yeah. I have to say, in both your comments, I hear a really strong balance between this whole human that you referenced, Adrienne, and Tom. You did the equation of meaning and purpose equate to discretionary effort. So regardless of your way of being as a leader, whether you wake up in the morning and put on your leader outfit and it's the leader outfit that says, I care about results, mostly results are my thing, or you're the leader who puts on the people first outfit. What you are saying makes sense regardless of which is your focus as a leader.
Yeah.
Admittedly, it's hard sometimes to get those results first leaders to understand how important the meaning and purpose and whole person focus is to that discretionary effort. So I'm curious how you help with that.
Well, we have some tools to help to do that. You're right, it is difficult. So one of the tools is the predictive index, which says that we are wired to prefer certain behaviors and have certain needs, and all of them are strengths, but when they're misapplied, they create chaos. And only 100% of us have a version of that. So if you're gaining the cooperation of other people, you need to know how you can position the values. And so results and discipline could mean you're stepping on everyone's toes, or it could mean you're gaining buy-in and how that helps them with their meaning. And we also have Blanchard's situational leadership, which says that and people misunderstand this all the time. It's not your leadership style that matters. It's what leadership is needed in the situation. So when you say situational leaders, you don't mean, well, sometimes I'm this and sometimes I don't. It says this person needs direction, not support. And that was eye opener for me because I tend to use a coaching approach and say, well, what do you think we ought to do? And that's my default is coactive. But sometimes people say, I don't know. And you say, put the glockenspiel on the doodle hammer and say, oh, thank you. Now I can think about something else. And so understanding what the need is. And I will brag about you, Dot, because I had the experience of your coaching. You had a really good sense. You could support, you could encourage, but sometimes you just said, gosh, he really needs to know at 8 o'clock in the morning, do outreach. And it's like only a yes or no fits in that. Did you do
Yeah.
outreach? And then if I didn't, you might use coactive coaching to say, well, what's keeping you from doing it? And what do you think would motivate you? So it isn't either or.
It's
Same
yes
thing.
and.
Yeah, it's and. It's what is needed by the person in the moment. And
Mhm.
sometimes people say, I'm a hands-off kind of manager, and others are more micromanager. And both of those words have built-in bias. The reality is sometimes they need your hands on the deck, and sometimes the best thing you can do is get out of the way and let them perform. So back to your question, because I'm so passionate about this and I don't want to take this much time. Back to your question and be more direct is that it's helpful to have somebody help you sort through all of that and decide what's needed. And if it isn't your style, partner with someone else, which Adrienne models all the time. If there's a spreadsheet involved, don't ask Tom Rosenack to do it. It's like God didn't give me spreadsheet genes, but I'm pretty good at trade-offs with people who can do spreadsheets and give them something reciprocal. But my God, don't put me in a spreadsheet.
Yeah, we learned that.
Don't learn it again, please.
Yeah, I would just echo what I think you said, Tom. That was perfectly said that it's you need both, right? If and you need the awareness to recognize where you lean. So if you are focused on people first, you have to have someone on your team who's results focused first, right? Because that's how you're going to find that balance. And and it's even it's not in and you need more than that. You need people focus and results focus, but you also need process focus, right? How are we going to get to those results? And who is going to be involved? And making sure, focusing on that experience. And then you also need the future thinking focus, right? So that innovative focus. How are we, what's coming next? Because we can't just get to great, we got the results, and then everybody sits and looks at each other and says, okay, so now what? Somebody has to be thinking about so now what before we need the so now what, right? So really it's results focused, people focused, process focused, and innovation focused. I think that's the balance.
And so what we can do is we can lay their team out on a wheel that has those four areas, and we can see where would they naturally go.
Mm-hmm.
And I put a little demonstration team together that Adrienne was on, and we were all up there in innovation. And we said, we're going to generate lots of ideas. But in our little community, we have Katya. Hello, Katya. And this conversation with Dot wouldn't have happened because maybe we should talk to Dot. And it was like, yeah, and maybe we should do this, and maybe we should do that. And so
Katya's our get it done gal.
yeah, so Kantia, she can think in the big ideas, but at a certain point, and she gives us a pretty long list, she said, okay, what are we going to do and when are we going to do it? And we
Mm-hmm.
need that. It's not that we can't do it. Everybody can operate in all of this, except me in process can't ever happen. But we can operate in all of those, but we have a natural inclination, and your strength maximized creates blind spots, which are not weaknesses. They're just things you don't see because you're looking at the direction you're looking at. And we need to look at the whole landscape. And we call strategy simplified, which is what are you counting on to win? So first you define a win, and then you start looking at your resources and then start mapping out how to use them. And I find if I don't do that with other people, I just go off in the direction I'm comfortable with.
And in that mapping, you're looking at the whole human, not just a head count.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you're thinking a step back from the runway instead of how do I get Dot to do this? You're starting by saying, this is what I think we need to do. How can I get Dot's contribution rather than just moving the pieces around, which results in disciplined person is more likely to do. Okay, these are our resources. And they might be completely right, but they're not going to see that the way they engage that person isn't likely to increase their enthusiasm about being engaged. So then they have to have the formal authority to be able to say, do this, whether it makes sense or not.
Yeah. And I would say that that's another big component of what we bring to the table is creating that space to rise up off the runway. You know, and the trouble that we have seen over the years of leaders being able to make that space, you know, so in our community, you know, with our podcasts and with the work that we do with clients, we're very intentional about creating space to rise up to that strategic level because oftentimes, even if you have the intent to do it, you put it on your calendar, some task is going to sneak in. That's runway level, right? And then you just keep postponing or ignore or, you know, however, you know, pushing it off and then you never get to it. So our encouragement is make that commitment to that time to rise up because that makes you more effective when you're back on the runway.
Yeah. So I know you are wanting to create more awareness of this community of conversation. How does it work? How does somebody come into your community and what do you talk about?
Adrienne, you want to take first stab at that?
Yeah. Well, one of our newer offers is something we're calling a People Strategy Power Hour. And it begins with the assessment that we've been talking about with the predictive index behavioral assessment. And you can begin that with just yourself if you want to gain some of that self-awareness and that insight and have a conversation with Tom and I or Tom or I to unpack your self-awareness a little bit, learn a little bit more about yourself. But then we've also extended that where you can add in up to nine additional team members within your organization to also have them complete that assessment. And then we will come back together with that leader and look at the collective of the team. So it begins, as we say, it begins with self-awareness, but then also we're offering a look into some insights for that collective team. That's one way to come into our community. Of course, we also welcome, you know, join our subscriber, you know, become a subscriber, listen to our podcast, follow us on LinkedIn and all of those things. But if you want more engagement from us to sort of kick the tires of a leadership beyond and try us out a little bit, that's the offer that we have right now.
And I just want to point out, this is why I love it, is it's fewer than 6 minutes to complete this.
Yes.
So if anybody is willing, there's no cost, no obligation. If anyone is willing to invest 36 minutes, 6 minutes to take an assessment, 30 minutes to debrief with either Adrienne and I, they will get actionable insight guaranteed. And of course, our hope is they say, well, yeah, how do I now apply that to other people I'm working with? And then they might decide to do a power hour. But the value is pretty, speed to value is like nothing else that I've used. That 36-minute investment will get, and I've been saying this now for 3 years, but I haven't found anybody that left a 30-minute call that didn't have one actionable item that comes from just taking some time and talking about themselves a little bit differently. And then boom, oh, maybe I should do this.
Yeah, that is a really, really generous offer. I mean, seriously, that's really generous. And it's in line with what I know about you, Tom. You just have a very generous spirit. I don't know you as well yet, Adrienne, I assume that because
Yeah.
you and Tom are working together, that you also, and you're making this offer. So two generous spirits here. What happens after that? So um, I don't get the sense that you guys are sellers or pitchers, but what happens in those sessions that makes you go, okay, that's it. That's enough. Thanks, that was great. Versus, hey, there's something here that I want to investigate.
Well, oftentimes, especially with the team focus, oftentimes that we will in conversation come up with a business challenge and through a people lens. So those business challenges are the consulting engagements that Tom and I can help with. So when we first began this conversation, we've got strong expertise in communication, in training and development, in change management, and in coaching. That's Tom's specific area of expertise, individual coaching, right? And so often something will come up where we're talking about a business initiative, and when you're layering in the strengths of the people to do it, there's a gap. And so we can help to support finding ways to fill that gap so that you're driving towards those results. What
And
would you add?
I want to just mention, and I had one yesterday where I did a readback of a PI and very much sensed in the conversation that she said, "This is interesting. Thank you." I didn't have any sense that she wanted to engage. Nothing was pressing at that moment. So now we have a relationship, and I know some of
And
the
maybe a community member,
and
a new
and, and
community member,
so
right?
yeah,
Yeah.
so it just seemed like for now we are done. And so then it's a
Mhm.
keep in touch strategy. And I've had people come back and they think of me and they say, when we talked before, I realized maybe you can, they didn't have the level of tension, which is another model we use, productive tension, that's going to lead them to want to invest another hour now. But things
Mhm.
change. So if they want to just get a little self-awareness and rebait their hook and keep fishing or just be part of the community, we're fine with that.
Yeah, and you're right. That's a great point because oftentimes, as with everything, as with life, and as with being humans, right? There's an ebb and a flow. So there may not be, maybe everything is really going smoothly with the initiatives that play right now, but understanding what support we can provide gives you a little side pocket support person,
Mhm.
right? When the time comes where you do maybe find that there's an initiative that you're struggling to get employees to adopt, or you're seeing some team conflict happening, or you're seeing some reduced effectiveness with a leader. Now you remember Tom and Adrienne help with that, right? And you
Yeah.
can
Just
call
want
us
to
back.
create awareness that we are a potential resource, and when they're ready to engage, how they engage. We walk the path of discovery, which is the current situation, the desired situation, the obstacles, internal, external, real, and imagine some ideas that they're moving forward and what's the passion that drives it all. And when we walk that path, sometimes one core intention emerges strongly, and then we're ready to look at and unpack it. And then it starts to be a paid engagement when they're really ready to do something. And we talk about what that would look like. But first, it's just,
Yeah.
how are you experiencing? I quote
Yeah.
Adrienne all the time. When pandemic, she said this, we're all experiencing the same thing, only differently. And so every business leader has experienced the same thing in one way, but in a distinct way. And we're looking for people. We define networking as becoming known, valued, and trusted. And this first step is a good way to be both known and trusted and just enough value for 36 minutes of investment.
Yeah, and our process always begins with, you said the word, right? A discovery
Always.
conversation and also a right fit conversation. We also recognize that we may help you discover something, but we're not the right fit for your organization or for you as a leader. And that's great. That's fine, right? We want to make sure that it's there's synergy with the leaders and the organizations that we're working with. So before we even go forward into any kind of solution talking, there's discovery and there's a right fit conversation to make sure that there's a desire to continue on both sides.
I'm going to put a little pressure on you, Dot. We're coming up on the hour. And so this is a last question. What would you want to leave people with if you had Tom and Adrienne? Good news is we can have a part two anytime.
Usually that he does that to me.
I smile because I always make Adrienne do that. And now I'm putting it on Dot. She can handle it.
Well, I want to offer a bit of an endorsement, if that's okay, as opposed to a question, although I like a challenge, so I'll see if I can come up with a question too. But I just want to say, you know, when we were talking about, hey, how can I help you guys with this podcast, right? And we were talking about how both of you come from a place of passion for this work. And you know, if you could, if life would allow it, you would do it for free. So I validate that generosity of spirit. I've experienced it. I did the predictive index with Tom. I found it really helpful. And I am, because of the work I do and because of the work I used to do, I've been assessed up, down, sideways, inside out.
Yeah.
I've been assessed. It's really valuable. I mean, it's really valuable. So I know that your invitation to join the community is sincere. Having experienced you, I don't feel any coercion. And I know, because I'm in a similar line of work to you guys, that sometimes people are reluctant to join a community when they perceive the goal is to sell you something. And I don't perceive that here. I perceive an invitation to a community, an invitation to a conversation. And if it turns out we can work together, that's great. If not, now you're part of the community, which, I mean, who doesn't need that? When we opened the conversation, we were waiting for you, Adrienne, at the beginning, and Tom gave me a very generous piece of acknowledgement. And I told him how much I needed that today, you know, to be in a community with you guys and feel so connected. There's value in that. There's value in that you don't have to pay for.
I don't think we need a question because that was a very heartfelt, sincere, and I got golden goosebumps hearing that from you. That comes across, and thank you for acknowledging that. We want to invite people into conversation, and we're eager to support them, whether monetarily or not. And if something makes sense, we're eager to engage however it makes sense at the time. Well said.
Thank you. I feel relieved of the question.
You rose to the
Thank you
challenge.
for your time,
Yes, thank you so
to do
much.
this because this is so much more valuable to do it like this than for Tom and I to present what we do and why and how we do it, right? Yeah. So thank you for your generosity of time to do this for us.
You're welcome, and thank you.